Well, today we're going to talk about cinema and culture with our good friends Israel and James, right?
Yeah.
How you guys doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. So great to have you. Now, how did you guys come together? How did you guys meet?
We're brothers, actually. So
Yes.
a long time ago. Yes. Yeah.
So you met as twins in the womb, or you met afterwards?
Afterwards, he's 5 years older than me. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was um as kids we made movies together in the yard as soon as we could. Before we even had a camera, we were playing with toys and we'd have elaborate films we'd make. And then eventually it got to where we were using cameras with like our older brothers. Because we have three other brothers too. So it's kind of like a big group that we would always kind of be doing that as kids.
And they all make movies too, or
They've kind of helped in different capacities, but Israel's the youngest, and he just really like did it the most, took it to the most effort put into it.
was your name originally Jacob before you started making movies, or
No, it's always
you
been
wrestled with somebody in the dark?
maybe, yeah. Do some wrestling, so
Now you guys also do work in MMA, right? Tell me a little bit about what you do, or not MMA. You don't mix anything. It's just jujitsu,
yeah.
correct?
We'll mix it, but we don't really train like for the sport of MMA. So we
Okay.
do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is the main thing I do. I did karate as a kid, so I still do a little bit of that. And me and my brother run a gym in Titusville, Spiral Martial Arts. And you've done more karate than me.
Yeah, and for the longest time, I kind of had a preference for karate, but I think from training the two over time, it just beat it out of me that jujitsu is the best way to fight overall. So just over time, eventually I
Because
came around
once you
to that
fall
idea.
on the ground, you don't know what to do as a karate guy, right? Is that how?
Exactly. So it just became I was adding more and more jujitsu into my karate to where I mean we still do all that stuff, but like I know the core of it for us is definitely jujitsu for
Now we
sure.
all know the greatest martial art is Steven Seagal style Aikido, right?
Yeah, no.
Absolutely. Of course.
Where you
Other
can
than
take
that,
one finger and someone come at you and just spin them up into the air in a tornado flip.
yeah,
I mean, I
yeah,
love that stuff.
yeah.
Fantastic. Do you guys ever do anything like that in your gym?
We try to. It's really difficult to perfect it because we've only seen off of Steven Seagal's like videos and stuff.
Yeah.
We've never been able to meet him, so we try to perfect his techniques, but
Some of them.
it's difficult.
What would you do if Steven Seagal showed up at your gym after I think he just won citizen of the world award at in Moscow recently? He became like greatest citizen ever of Russia.
Wow.
Hmm.
Some kind of it's like the equivalent of like the presidential medal of honor for us. I think
Oh,
they
okay.
just gave that to him in Russia. So if he was like on a like adventure tour and he wanted to kind of have a victory lap and he decided, hey, I'm in Florida, let me go surprise a really cool gym I've heard about. What would you do when he knocks on the door and you hear, hello, guys?
It's hard to imagine what I would do in that
Uh,
scenario, but
I mean, that's
that would be pretty
combining
cool.
two of your loves, cinema and martial arts, in
That's
one
true.
human existence, right?
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
We definitely invite him in for class and have him teach us for a few hours for
Yeah.
sure.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, he'd probably be on the FBI list after you had him there too,
Yeah,
because of those
probably true.
Russian
Yeah.
connections.
I think we're already on
Unfortunately.
that list.
So having said that, what are some of the things that you've learned the most about human nature having run a gym in this way?
That's a good question.
What are things you learn about human behavior and human nature?
Well, for me at least, I've always been kind of an agreeable person. Like I like to get along with people, and I hate conflict in general. Like any kind of disagreement, I usually would just naturally just apologize and let's move on.
Yeah.
Uh, and they definitely taught me that there's some people you can't do that with. That you can't really get a good conversation out of them, whether they're a narcissist or something like that. That they're gonna try to take advantage of you sometimes. So it
You're
taught
talking
me to
about
be a little bit.
customers and
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
customers at your gym. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
How about you, Israel?
Oh, I would say probably one of the biggest things is just how good you can get at something. So like for teaching like young men who have like no physical skills at anything, they're not athletic. Like if they put in the time and work in jujitsu, they can develop this skill and it builds this confidence in them. And the same goes for like older students who haven't really done any sports or athletics, and they can start training and like just knowing how good they can actually get at something like jujitsu. I think that's probably one of the most significant things for me.
Yeah. So seeing someone that has no athletic ability become a great person and athletically experienced.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, how often have you got an injury or a cracked rib or something like that doing all the things you guys do? Because Brazilian Jiu Jitsu is pretty intense, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah, it can be. We train pretty smart, pretty safe. So I've actually never had like a serious injury. I mean, I've got some knee pain, some back pain, stuff like that from training for so long, but I try to be pretty careful in training.
Yeah.
and what has been the market experience? Have you guys seen an uptick over the last few years in interest in your sport, or about the same, or what?
Definitely an uptick in jujitsu. It's gotten a lot more popular, I
Is it
think.
because of UFC and its social fashion, or is it more because of social unrest and people feeling like, well, things are starting to look a little tougher around here. Maybe I need to learn how to fight like those guys on TV.
I think that's definitely a part of it. I mean, I think the UFC and like Joe Rogan talking about jujitsu is a huge driving force, but there's definitely something culturally going on with like people wanting to have some like a serious experience to simulate something that feels very serious and
Mm-hmm.
makes them feel alive, I think, in a
Yeah.
way.
I talk about simulating something that looks alive. I see the head of a woman behind you, which I remember from a movie. Can you tell us a little bit about this head and how it got there and why
Right.
does it
So yeah,
show up in your films?
that's one of the so yeah, I have had a few mannequin heads or things like that in a few different films, but that one is from the last one we did, I'm a Man, and it's from the character Terrence. He believes he has a wife, but essentially it's just he's doing so much hallucinogenic drugs and fantasizing so much that he believes that this inanimate object is actually a person. But there's definitely something thematically that I keep writing about, which is some sort of a simulacrum, like artificial reality, like dehumanized totems for supposed to be like a person, but it's something very off-putting about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that, I remember that Twilight Zone. Remember, was it Twilight or was it Twilight Zone? Yeah. Where they have the episode of the mall with all the mannequins coming to life. Remember that
Yeah, I
episode?
think I remember that. Yeah, yeah,
Now
that's
you,
always unsettled me.
yeah, it has been unsettling for a lot of people who've experienced that. The mannequins over the years have gotten a lot bigger. Have you noticed? You know,
Yeah, no, definitely, definitely.
but you got a classic one. You got one that was in the pre-revolutionary America era, right? Where they
Yeah,
still had a little bit of a jawline there,
sure. Yeah, no, I kind of searched out the older style ones because I definitely saw a lot of that when I was looking for
Some of those mannequins nowadays are basically a couch with a head on top, I mean, it's just so wide. And
them. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, it's amazing Victoria's Secret is still able to survive. It's probably a money laundering scheme, given the guy that ran it does he still
Mm,
off Wexler or something? The guy was like
Yeah.
best friends with Jeffrey Epstein. And
right.
Mhm.
I guess that's what the secret was.
That's the
Yeah,
secret. Yeah.
that was the secret. Somebody named Victoria was probably one of their first victims, unfortunately. And yet people wear their clothes with glee and,
Sure.
as they stare at giant mannequins. So James, what about you? How'd you get into, like, were you involved with that film? Because I saw the movie I Am a Man. Is that what it's called?
I'm a Man.
A
Yeah.
short film is really good, and I shared it with some friends who also enjoyed it. So I wanted to promote
Thank
it
you.
here to let people check it out. But were you involved in that, and what did you think about it?
So I've always
You don't
kind
have
of
to explain, guys. You don't have to explain the meaning of your work. Okay, you can be obnoxious like David Lynch and all that,
Yeah,
and say,
David Lynch style.
you don't have to explain the meaning. But
yeah, I always try to help with the idea because I believe in it a lot, but I end up being really busy. Like I help with running the gym and I do construction and I'm a baker, and so I have a lot of I don't have a lot of free time.
and you're a
But so
candlestick maker too, right? Yeah,
yeah, of course.
yeah.
So I tend to just try to help as best I can. But the story is definitely like Israel's story, and then I just wanted to help however I could. And we I think we were originally wanted to use someone else in it so we could
Hmm.
kind of work more behind the scenes, but then we just didn't really have anybody that we felt could do the two parts the way we knew we could work together on. So
Yeah, and it would be easier to schedule around our schedule rather than somebody else's. But that was pretty difficult to direct and act in again in all of it. So
How long did that take to film all that?
I think it was over the course of like 2.5 months. Like when we could, we'd schedule a day, try to get a whole scene shot. And I think that's around how long it took.
And when did you guys film that and put it out originally?
That was last, I think we finished it last October. And then I'm actually working on like a shorter version. Like I made a shorter cut that's a little tighter. In a lot of ways, it's a little better. And then I'm trying to get that one into film festivals because it's easier to get shorter films into some of those.
What's
festivals.
the sweet spot for length?
I usually say under 10 minutes, but the shortest I could get this one was like 13 minutes.
And what's the total running time now, right?
17. It's 17 minutes.
Yeah, 70 minutes. And it was filmed where, in Titusville, or
Mostly Titusville, a little bit of Palm Bay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was it. Yeah.
yeah, and it was it's about, and you've got a picture of this, right? You guys
Right,
are, it's about a podcast, so you're on a podcast now.
Yeah.
I I could relate to the scene a little bit about when you meet people who are fans of your show and you meet and they want to, oh, you're going to be in my city? Yeah, let's go grab a bite to eat. And then it's kind of a strange thing. It's very much like that, a lot of
That's
times.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, because I've never had a podcast. I don't have any fans or anything like that, but there's always something is relatable about the experience, just in a not literal way.
yeah. You can only talk about seed oil so much when you're at a wing house eating wings. Like that one time when you talked about seed oils and you're like, yeah, that was awesome.
It's awesome. Yeah. The seed oils.
You do that for about the first 30, 40, 50 minutes. And then you have to figure out what you're going to do with your life from there,
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think it's important. I talk a lot about how we need to make good movies and good art. I think you guys are an example of that. So I wanted to put you on for that. Why do you think there's such a lack of good? Because you commented, you said, "I am trying," was your famous quote, Israel, because you said, "I'm trying to," because I said, we don't make any good movies that are people who are not part of the establishment today.
Mm-hmm.
We're just not. There's no artistic, drive from people who are not part of the establishment. Why do you think that is?
I think a lot of them are trying to essentially make propaganda. Like they're not trying to tell a story in the way that I understand that stories are told, or at least how I feel about them. So oftentimes, look at like a Daily Wire movie or something, which I wouldn't really call that even. Ultimately, that's not really anti-establishment, but it's like it is just, this is propaganda. You don't actually have a story to tell most of the time.
Yeah. Why do you think that folks who are not a part of the establishment are so keen to make propaganda instead of making art or attempting?
It's an interesting question. I think they're thinking about it too analytically, and I don't think they're thinking about like why art connects, like why they connect with a piece of art, or like why a film connects with them. And they just think that, oh, I need to make a story and I need to insert my values into it and teach a lesson. There has to be a moral of the story, and it's got to be making a point. There's got to be a whole point to it. And that's kind of what I think. And I see that a lot. I see it a lot with even people who aren't really trying to be anti-establishment. That's the type of films they're trying to make. A lot of times they're just trying to imitate Hollywood, which Hollywood is, there's a lot of great films that have come out of that system, but a huge part of that system is it's a business to make a product to sell. And I'm not really interested in doing that with film because, well, one, it's extremely difficult to actually make money off of just making film. And there's better ways to make money, I think, doing actual.
What do you think is the best way for an artist to do like you're doing, like you're a baker, but then you're also a film guy? So that's the best way, you think, to have like a parallel track, like have your business that you do to make money and then have your art, use that to fund into your art? Not try to mix the two and make your primary financial incentive based on your art? What do you think?
Well, I feel like some people are just like, I really have a bunch of different like things I do just because that's what I naturally am. I'm interested in a lot of different things. So, but some people are more like they're really good at just hyper focusing. But I think if they're going to do that, it's going to be an all or nothing. You completely go for it. And some people, if they're great artists, they're going to make money because they're so great either way. Like they don't have to compromise. but that's like, that's obviously a big choice because you might end up 10 years down the road and, be destitute.
But it seems like there's always this tension between, like, you hear artists say, between what I really want to make and what the people want me to make, whether it's the studios or the customers in general wanting your same stupid greatest hit. So how do you, if you make your money, they call that FU money, if you make your money somewhere else outside of your art, that does kind of free you to do what you really want to do and make really good art for its own sake, right?
I agree. Yeah.
Do you think that's the key, or do you think there's a way to like have a lot of financial success to keep the roof over your head and primarily focus your attention on your art, whether it's a movie or some other medium?
Yeah, I think the mixing of the two is where it gets complicated. Like, are you doing a job and providing? And there's like a sweet spot that you can think of in some like of the classic Hollywood films, where like obviously this was made to entertain people and to sell as many tickets, but there was also like a creative spark that was like inspiration for it. But I think actually one of the biggest issues is that people are trying to appear a certain way. They're trying to appear as like this idea of what they have as like a filmmaker from Hollywood.
Yeah.
And in Hollywood, they have all these unions and they have a very specific system that they teach you in film school of like how you have to make a movie. Like you have to have, all these different positions filled. You got to get all these permits to shoot. And I don't think you really need to do any of those things. Like, I don't think people really like what makes a good story, a good film is not that the camera is really good and you're really technically sound with everything. I think that the story has to be good and come from an honest place. And it seems like even when some people I've met who are like amateur filmmakers, they're really trying to like play Hollywood. Like they'll do these film festivals with a red carpet thing. They'll take these set photos. They'll like use this lingo from Hollywood movie sets. And to me, that's like a million miles away. That's like a different world that I don't even really want to be a part of. I don't want to work in Hollywood and make films that way. So by doing that, I'm never going to make like a $200 million budget movie. So it is limited on what I can do, but I think there's ways around, like whatever you want to film in a story, there's ways around it without having to spend $1 million.
Yeah. What do you think about, do you think age has an effect on the vibrancy, the kind of thyroid health of the art that you see in the, like David, if you look at like David Lynch's movies, he feels like, he hasn't done as much and he just, I don't know what he's doing, but then you look at Werner Herzog, you look at some of his earlier work, and then the movies he makes now, they're always like sponsored by Amazon Prime, and it's, I mean, it just feels like he's a caricature of himself. He's become the meme, and all that, and there's not that. I mean, it's an age thing maybe, but it's also, it's just like with Kanye West, his music to me, in recent years, it's, especially recently, and it's just, he's at an age where it's just like you can't be a 44-year-old rapper at that point. And it's just not.
I do wonder about that because
you think about Herzog, when he was young and he's talking about the asphyxiation of the jungle.
Yeah.
I mean, he's not, now he's talking about Elon Musk and it's AI and it just feels just exhausting. Where's the wildness?
There's something there going on.
Is it thyroid, you think, or is it estrogen? What's going on that just makes the film of, makes these people's edginess, it probably is. It's a testosterone drop. It's an estrogen. You guys familiar with Ray Peat? That's all he talks about is the endocrine system. A lot of his stuff is about endocrinology and
I haven't seen
the effects of estrogen, the effects of serotonin, the effects of all these PUFAs, seed oils. You know about seed oils?
Oh yeah. That wouldn't surprise me.
So maybe Werner Herzog's eating too much seed oils in LA where he lives.
It could be it. It could be. I wonder if it's just like a part of aging. Like there's a time when you have that vibrancy and you're supposed to create. And then there's a time when you're supposed to kind of just like
stop,
maybe, chill out and appreciate what you've created.
Yeah, but then you got people like, Mr. Miyagi does his best work at what age,
That's true.
Then you got people like Rene Girard, my hero, one of my guys, he's over there kicking tail in his 80s, just
that is
connecting dots,
Yeah, that does make me wonder because there's a lot of exceptions to that.
It makes you wonder, what is why is it that, people get caught I think some of Elvis's best work was in his later years, right before he died, you know, when he
Yeah,
was
no,
doing the
I agree.
kung fu stuff on stage. I thought that was
Mhm.
really good, you know.
Yeah,
People might find that hammy or cheesy, but it was just, you know, it's different. You know, it's easy to say it so now because it's become such a thing in Hollywood and people have emulated it. So it feels that way. But at the time, you know, I think it was kind of interesting, you know.
Mhm.
It's hard.
yeah,
I mean, I wasn't there at the time, but I can imagine, you know, how what a you know scene to have this guy, you know, performing these kung fu moves and things like that, and the flutes and everything from the 70s.
yeah.
Yeah, and the outfits too.
The
Huh?
outfits.
What's that?
And the outfits too.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah. Then you have people like Colonel Sanders. You consider him a
like the
performance
outfits
artist. I
got
mean,
good
he
work.
perf-
Exactly.
Colonel Sanders doesn't get going with his performance art until what his 80s.
Right.
You know? And he was hoodwinked into putting seed oils into his chicken. I don't know when, but
Mm,
killed so many people. He doesn't even, you know, realize the carnage that, you know, has been unleashed by his likeness. But nevertheless, I mean, you've got, I mean, basically, Colonel Sanders has become an image of death around the world. Wherever you see that sign, that there's around that 50-mile radius is an extreme amount of PUFA poisoning.
yeah, you
You
can
know,
smell it.
insulin resistance is spreading wherever that man's face
Mm,
and likeness has been blazoned. It's like a symbol of like a vulture almost, you know,
Hmm.
that's true.
picking apart the slow decay of humanity wherever it goes. But you know, all these folks, just to going back to it, didn't really hit their stride till they're old. So why do we have to assume that, you know, when you get older, you have to be more conservative and play to your greatest hits? I think we should do like greater and greater and greater art till we're gone. If that's your calling to make art, don't you think?
I agree. Yeah, I would like to try to avoid that trap, whatever that is, and how that comes about. So
Yeah.
I've thought about it.
Yeah, a lot of Trump, like even Donald Trump as a performance artist, he's looking at him from 2016 to now, you know, there's a slowness to the energy that's there now, right?
Definitely. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I mean, it's, you know, we all have to have our own, you know, pace of life. And, you know, it's hard to, you know, I certainly couldn't. One thing I couldn't do like they do, they memorize so many people's names and faces. Can you imagine that?
Yeah.
How many names that guy knows? Like, you know, I mean, just imagine every little state he goes to, and you've got this donor and this grifter and this chairman of this local party and this campaign, this and that, and this endless generic, you know, these horrible people that are not very, you know, they're not very memorable people. These are the kind of the worst scum of the universe that hang around politicians. So they're not very easy to remember. And he's got to remember, allegedly, you would think, you know, oh, you know, Darla, how are you? How's Wisconsin? You know, it's just, I don't know how someone does it. So it is a tremendous talent to be able to keep that kind of memory going in every day. Um, so when you, I guess my point with the filming is, how do you, you know, how do you make an impact? Let's say you make a really good artistic film, and I know this is the hardest thing. And I mean artistic in the sense that something powerful, evocative, something that really sticks with people and lands something in their subconscious and makes them, you know, it just makes an impact emotionally and they think about it, stays with them. How do you do something like that and not be a part of the system, and yet at the same time reach a certain amount of people? I mean, if you make a really good film and only 50 people saw it, I mean, you know, is that okay? Is that enough? Is that the point of good art? If 50 people saw it, that's fine. That's, you know, that's fine, you know. Or is it, you know, and what is that critical threshold where you feel like, okay, I've done what I could do to make this reached by enough people that kind of satisfies what I thought this piece of work could reach.
Yeah, that's definitely something I consider often because we've made these films and I think the most views we've gotten on one is like 650 views or something. So I'm definitely not making it for that reason, but at the same time, I do want as many people as possible to see it because hopefully it connects with somebody. Like if there's a reason for it to be seen, somebody can see it and connect to it. And I've had a few select people watch it, like even just you watching it and having a reaction to it. That's pretty good for me. It would be pretty cool to have more people see it, but I feel like I have to focus on just if I feel like I have to make the film, I got to make it. And part of that is so I can watch it because it
Right.
feels like a meditation, like I can get it out of me and I can just see it now in front of me.
What do you think is more important, getting just filming it and editing it, or watching it yourself?
I think
For yourself?
watching it definitely, because that's
Mhm.
something I really want to work on is making the experience of making a film a little more enjoyable and a little more
Yeah.
just like having that creative, spiritual almost feeling while making it, because a lot of it is like it's very hard to make. Like it's very stressful, very
Yeah.
frustrating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's your filming philosophy? Do you do a lot of editing, a lot of takes, or just one and done kind of things?
As many as we need, because that's, I mean, we're figuring stuff out and like
Yeah.
we're not the best actors. So we're ultimately just trying to get like a good enough take, with that
Yeah.
as far as filming goes.
What about you, Israel? James, what do you like to, how do you, what's your approach when you pitch in with films?
Well, I try to be as natural as I can because I feel like when I try to do too much of like a voice or a character, it tends to come off, not so good. So I'll try to just generally listen to what Israel's saying with like the story and the character, and then try to just be as natural with it as I can. I think we definitely had a lot of times during this film where we were kind of figuring out how we wanted to say things while we were recording it because we were still like kind of getting used to doing it. And so there was a lot of times where we'd kind of just be talking about it while we're doing it and saying, oh well, let's try it like this a little bit too. So that makes it fun, but it does make it take longer.
Now, how do you want to make it more of a spiritually meditative experience? You said,
I think because that's probably, it feels like the part that I really like and I want to get better at doing and like recreating is like it feels almost like a ritual, almost like a prayer. Like as I'm coming up with a story, like if it's coming from some subconscious place, I don't even know where. It's a lot of them are like dream elements,
yeah,
or sometimes it's just silly stuff that I think is funny, obviously. But and like as the story comes, and then try to write it down. Like as the story comes, that's the peak of like that feeling, and then I can only ever try to get a glimmer of that again by watching it. So
yeah,
I
yeah.
maybe it's just
It's never as good as the experience when you first imagine it, right?
yes,
Mm,
yeah, and that's just what
So
I'm trying
true.
to capture, I guess. And I think a big part is just organization and taking away stressors, and I'm still
It's
figuring.
interesting how you think about it that way. That cinema in that vein is always kind of a nostalgic reaction to something, that you're trying to glimpse.
Yes,
All
yeah,
cinema is that way. If it's based in the dreams and stuff, is this kind of trying to, because I know what you mean by that. Oh man, so many times, like I've done some film series where I interview people. It's a series called Things Hidden, the film series. It's different from Things
mhm,
Hidden, the podcast series.
right.
Um, and the film one, I try to integrate some scenes that come to mind in my head. Like one time I was interviewing one gentleman named Sir Owen, who it's on our website. It's called Sir Owen Comes to Dine, and he was a former military intelligence, private intelligence guy. And he talks about, all these kind of bleak analysis of like the dark side of human nature based on what he's seen in his life and the war industrial complex and how disgusting it is. So we got filet mignon, raw filet mignon, and I had him eat it during the filming of the movie, and we filmed that, we filmed him cutting the meat and zooming in on it. And we filmed him putting it in his mouth, and we got some really interesting. I made him do swallowing sounds repeatedly afterwards to record the right swallow sound. I wanted it really a dramatic sound when he would make a point about something that, felt disgusting and trying to show the viscerality, the disgustingness, the violent nature of this Mickey Mouse military industrial complex that we have. And, then we had this one scene where, I don't, we could probably do it a different way, a little bit better next time, but I kept seeing in my mind that as I'm interviewing him, there's a viewpoint of the action that's from a corner in the room that has a kind of mayonnaise looking filter to it. Like mayonnaise has been like a greasy eye look, you know? So it feels this weird feeling like someone's watching you with a greasiness to their eyes, just to kind of create, again, an unexpected experience that you don't get in a traditional podcast interview, you know?
Yeah.
But there's so many examples of that, of letting the dream world express itself in medium like a podcast or a video interview that have been not done yet. It's like this massive open field for just if you're not afraid of, you know, people play within the genres too much. And they're not afraid to just like, well, why can't I do something weird like this, you know? Why can't I have a strange surrealist moment in the midst of an unscripted dialogue about a topic that I want to cover, you know? And I think that tapping into the dream that you're talking about and just letting your imagination, there's something very, and you know what's so weird? You mentioned the spiritual thing, is that people think that this kind of stuff on the surface, you know, you think of a surrealist filmmaker like a David Lynch, and typically, you know, most Christians would say, oh, that's the furthest away from what Christians should be doing with their time. But it's not. It's actually, in some sense, the closest of what we could be doing with our creative energies, you know? Because we're imitating the creator in that point, right? To recreate these ecstatic moments that kind of unveil the truth in some mysterious way about who we are, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. There's like a level of communication that's beyond words, and yeah, it's just like a feeling, but
What is that?
I don't know.
Yeah. Again, why is it though that we don't see these happening? Why, you know, with all, I mean, maybe I'm just not in the scene where this is happening, but why aren't we seeing, with the ubiquitous nature of high quality films, even smartphones and stuff, why aren't we seeing more like just massive renaissance of like really good, you know, movies, and you know, whether they're running them on YouTube or whatever, just why aren't we seeing that? I mean, maybe again, I'm not really in that, probably the scenes where the fun stuff's happening, but you know, nothing's percolating up to the point of someone like me who would kind of be positioned to maybe run into those things in general. You know, why aren't we seeing that? You know, it used to be, you know, in the early 2000s, you know, it was still a very limited thing to make a cinema quality level film. You know, you just couldn't afford the equipment, you know, and now it's available for anybody. You know, anybody can go down to Best Buy and buy a high quality camera if they have the money, to a certain extent. And with the right software and things like that, they can make something that looks pretty, you know, pretty top notch, and something that would be considered, oh, wow, you know, you've self-taught, you can get the software for free, you know, or, you know, whatever. Why aren't we seeing this massive explosion of this type of stuff that stands out to people? Or maybe you're seeing it. Maybe you don't agree.
I see a little bit of it like peeking through, but I feel like maybe a big part of it is the people compartmentalizing things, like you said, with the genre, like categorizing, and like they separate, like, this is how movies are made and this is what movies are. And I think having such a history of the technology being unavailable and only being accessible through this like Hollywood system or studio system has to do with that. So that blended, like the thought of it in people's mind when they think movies, they don't ever really think art fully. Most of the time it's like a blend of like entertainment and something you pay for and something that somebody makes money off of. But it's just funny because if you tell someone, oh, I write poetry in my free time, they're like, oh, that's really cool. Or if you say, you know, like, I draw or I paint, there's really no expectation like, okay, are you making money off of that? Or like, how are you doing that? What's your budget for that? You know, and I feel like people are going to get to a point where they start to see movies as just another form of art that you can participate in. And I also see a similar thing happening with video games as well.
What, the making of video games or the streaming of them?
The accessibility of the technology. So you have like artists who are making, you can make your own video game now. Like, a much easier way than before.
Yeah, there was I used to have all kinds of video game ideas when I was a little kid, and then when I realized how much horrible math and things, I said, oh my, I'm not, you know, it's such a, you know, when you're a kid, you just think it's like oh, that must be like animation, and then somebody makes it move somehow. You don't really
Yeah,
think about,
right.
you know, like, oh, this will be like being a Disney animator if you want to be Shigeru Miyamoto making Mario, you know, because you see his little, I remember seeing his little pictures of his little drawings of Mario on paper, you know, and he would have all the little worlds, you know, drawn out on a little graph paper. And I was like, oh, that's how they make games. It looks really fun, you know? And then somebody makes that interactive, and then you realize how that somebody part is everything and requires a massive budget. Well, you're saying it's becoming much more downscaled for people now, though. They don't have to have a massive budget because these software programs do a lot of that for you, right? So the
Yeah.
artist types can come in and make us give it a shot without it having to be primarily coders and math folks, right?
Yeah, I think so. And animation as well. So, I mean, there's some filmmakers I see on like YouTube that are very much a product of that like accessibility that I think are making interesting things. But yeah, in general, I'm trying to find other filmmakers, even locally, that are like in any way
Who
on
are
a
some artists that you know nationally or whatever, or anybody that would come to mind that people should check out?
one is Umami on
Okay.
YouTube. He's an animator.
Okay.
That's a really big one. He made the interface, like he makes these short animations and then puts them together as a feature length on YouTube.
Okay. Cool.
That's a big one.
How about for regular film? Do you have any guys you recommend, or making shorts or long feature films or documentaries or anything?
Making shorts. Modern ones. It's harder in the moment to think of any. One that I think is doing some interesting things is Joel Haver on YouTube, who makes like he would do like weekly like sketch videos, but then he would do like feature length films, and he would really strip away like all of these concepts of like what you need to make a movie. And he's got some pretty interesting videos talking about filmmaking. Like there's one called "You're Already a Filmmaker" that I think is a really great video on the concept, and that's something that comes.
And he puts out short films too, or something, or
Yeah, he does shorts and feature lengths and like sketch videos that he calls films because he thinks
yeah.
of them the same way.
What do you think it is about the medium of film that makes it so much like that's it's so attractive all these years longer? We still use the word film for something that is no longer mostly usually it's not film. Um, why do you think that format still draws people who want to do something in a way like you guys want to do, where you want to show a portrait of something?
Mhm. Um, for me, I feel like it's closer to what my mind imagines and what my dreams look like. The combination of like audio and visual. For me, that's a big deal.
But I also feel like it's relatively new,
That's
like
true.
as a far art form. Like you have painting has been around for a really long time. We've had a lot of time for people to do that. And film is still, only a little over 100 years that we've had this thing, and it's so extreme. Like it can be so completely suck you in more than maybe any other art form because it puts them all
Yeah.
together. It feels like.
And it's not, I mean, watching I watched your short film on a smartphone, but it would have been a whole different experience if I could have watched it on a big screen in a theater, right? I mean, my
It's true.
goodness,
Yeah.
right? It would have been way more engrossing, right? But what do you think about the nature of the distribution of that? Do you think that makes a big impact? And do you lament the fact that, it's hard for, do you lament the limitations that most people will watch your content on, being a smartphone or a small laptop if they're lucky? If
It doesn't really bother me. I mean, if everything could be in like a theater, a cinema, that would be pretty great. And that's the most fun part about like the smaller film festivals is sometimes you'll get to see it on a big screen. But I mean, I grew up in the most impactful movie experiences of my childhood were mostly on a VHS tape.
okay.
So it doesn't really bother me
What were
that
your
it's
most impactful cinematic experiences as a child?
as a child, as a young child, we watched a lot of movies because we were homeschooled and we spent too much of that time just watching movies. So I would say like early Muppets stuff, Marx Brothers, early Ninja Turtles, like the live action films, Jackie Chan movies. Um, do you think of any others?
I saw The Matrix when I was like
Oh yeah,
9 years old,
Yeah.
accidentally, just at some family's house. I kept like looking around, like, I'm getting to watch this right now,
Wow.
and that was pretty crazy for sure. I definitely wanted all leather clothes and sunglasses for quite a while after that.
yeah.
Wow.
I think as I was a little older, I started getting into more like serious film stuff, and some of that would probably be like Nicholas Winding Refn films, like Bronson, Old Boy, the Korean film, and thinking of other significant ones like Buffalo '66 is probably my favorite film.
And who's your favorite filmmakers of all time? Do you have? Do you have a favorite top three or something?
I got a couple. Let me think. I would have to go Jim Henson.
Oh yeah, I love Jim Henson.
Yeah, Vincent Gallo, uh,
Vince McMahon.
Vince McMahon is one of the best filmmakers, honestly. Let me think. There's some big ones. I really like horror, so like horror films. So Toby Hooper is a big one.
What is your genre that you call these shorts that you've put out are like horror comedy, right?
Yeah, I categorize it as that. Like it could be horror, it could be black comedy.
What does that mean?
I think black comedy is just like a darker comedy film, but to me, I'm not really trying to think like, oh, I want this to be scary or I want
Right.
this to be funny. To me, they're very similar in movies, like really like a lot of horror, like Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 is like one of my favorite horror films, and that's like really funny. Um, it's like the actual scenario that the character is in is horrific, and it's like very real, like what it's like playing off of, but it's at the same time to me really funny, like getting in those situations with the fan and going back to his house and then slowly realizing when he introduces him to his wife and things like
Yeah.
that, like cutting his own face off is obviously that's disgusting and terrible, but it's kind of hilarious in another way.
Maybe ironic. Yeah.
Ironic, I guess it's
A little
it
bit.
just yeah.
Yeah, I don't typically like. Do you guys like blood and guts type stuff and the graphic stuff?
A little bit.
Yeah.
There's some that I don't, but
I don't like it too much. I don't like the grossness of like the cornstarch, the texture of it.
Mhm.
You know, is that what they
Yeah,
usually use, like corn syrup or
so, yeah,
cornstarch?
yeah, corn syrup, yeah.
Ugh,
It is gross, yeah.
it's just, you know.
Yeah, I think
But I don't like anything with the blood oozing and all that. Now,
Mhm.
I like the more strange, like disturbing, more psychological, because I like those kind of like disturbing, like why is this happening? Like a dream, the surrealist type
Mhm.
horror and suspense. But you
Yeah,
have a lot of that in your film. That's why that was what was interesting. That what I liked about it.
thank you. Yeah, but I really like those ideas with the blending of the just something strange and surreal happening
Mhm.
in those
In
interviews.
in a documentary nonfiction
Yeah, I
format.
get excited about ideas like
Oh, I
that. Like
love that. I've been wanting. I mean, we gotta have to work together at some point because
definitely.
I've been wanting to do these things. I have all these ideas for like how to like how to make an adventure, and there's different gradations of this. But one concept that I think needs to be further developed is like unscripted fictional films. Have you ever heard of this concept?
I think so. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if it's a concept. It's just something I've wanted to do. I'm sure there's every time I say something, always, there's always some nerd or somebody said, "Oh, that's already been done 100
Right. Yeah.
times. This one guy did it in Denmark 100 times." And it's like, okay, and I've never seen it, but um, I like the idea of like staging, like you want to make a movie. Let's say you want to make a movie that like follows a modern take on the tale of Jonah, right? And you're gonna but you have a loose sketch of like where the story's gonna go, but you don't actually like script any of the dialogue. You just kind of tell the persons in the scene, generally speaking, any objectives that need to be accomplished at some point. See what I mean? Like
Mhm.
you have to accomplish X, Y, and Z feeling, or you got to get this fact put into for the story purposes. But other than that, go for it. So you
Yeah.
just like, and then you allow them to kind of just talk as if it's a documentary type. You're just capturing unscripted, stuff, and then you find a way to make a movie using all of that unscripted stuff with some scaffolding of a story arc put in there with some, sequences.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I
Yeah,
don't know
that's
if anybody's ever done that, but I think that would be an interesting way because I don't like here's one thing I don't like. I don't like how it bothers me that like when we talk about the concept of a documentary, it's so boring in the structure, right? It's so predictable. It's so there's not a lot of innovation going on in that world. There's not a lot of risk. It's talking heads. You got the guy in their office and they zoom in on the face. And then you've got the sequence. If it's Food Inc. or something. You get the sequence of the factory corn or whatever, the factory milk, factory, you know, and then boom, you know, overhead shot of people walking in New York City and all this boring stuff.
Yeah.
And it's tiresome. We don't want it. And then they always try to put graphics and the world is going to die and all these terrible things, you know, if they're trying to make a point about something. But I think it'd be more interesting to make documentaries that feel more narrative, that feel more like you're on an adventure, but there's no script, so that you're blurring the lines. Because one thing I don't like about scripted films is that you get the feeling that they're acting, and even the best actors, you know, and I don't want to feel like you're acting. I want to feel like something's happening that hasn't been planned, you know, at all times. You know, most of the time there's just spontaneous stuff going on, you know.
Yeah, I would prefer that. A lot of seeing documentaries that are basically just like routine corporate video almost is really soul crushing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, mockumentaries sometimes have fun, but they again too scripted.
Sometimes, yeah.
You know, have you seen some of these mockumentaries? They kind of like Incident at Loch Ness.
Yeah. I like the format of like the found footage style. I always liked that, but it could be hard, to make it actually feel real when they're talking.
This is Spinal Tap. I don't know how much of that was spontaneous, unscripted.
Right. Yeah. I'm not sure.
Yeah. What do you think about? Do you ever think about how to reapproach these newer mediums like TikTok, for example, and to put something really interesting in a TikTok format, like a serial drama? What's their max? Is it 90 seconds?
I think it's 10 minutes now, actually.
Oh, 10 minutes. But could you ever thought about, you know, playing with the TikTok medium and entering into that space using its own enough of its own language in and of itself to make it not too foreign, right? So you're not just superimposing a short film, but you're actually like entering into that like world and making a story through that. Have you ever thought about that? And is there anybody doing anything like that?
I would like to. I've been interested even in the concept of the vertical video, like that aspect ratio. I think that there's a reason for it, and there's like a way to approach that in a unique way that could look very unique. And yeah, so I've seen people, they just like will post their short film on TikTok, and no one's really going to sit there and watch it in that format. So like you're saying, kind of like there's got to be some way to kind of use that medium to do something interesting. I have thought about that. Yeah.
What do you think about they one of the things that's interesting is like you see it on the Facebook stories, you see it on the Twitter vertical, you see it on YouTube shorts. TikTok really seems to be the one pushing all of that, where they play that weird sound noise, that weird music, and it's always about, you know what I'm talking about, that sound. What is that thing from the movies? Where they're all, it's always some strange folk conspiracy theory about look at Biden's face, and then they zoom in on a piece of shadow and they say, what is that noise? What is that sound?
I'm trying to think of it.
You know what I'm talking about?
Like a riser, maybe.
They go, it's that noise like that. You know what I'm talking about?
I think I can hear it in my head. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, you see it on all these shorts. It's like these little creepy things, like what is going on in this video? And then it's like a guy and he like falls into a manhole, and then he's like, what is that? They went to another dimension or something. And it plays that sound.
I think it might be a riser, but yeah.
What is a riser? What does that mean?
It's like a sound effect, like when like a jump scare is about to happen, for example, like, and then he goes, and sometimes it's just like, sometimes it's kind of like that. I think that's what that would be called. I'm not sure.
How important do you guys put your focus on sound? I've heard sound is the most important to a movie. A lot of people have told me.
Yeah,
it's just a thing, but
there were a lot of issues with this last one. It's difficult when you don't have like a specific person running the audio. So, but music is really important to me. So I know the original score, the parts of it where James did that music, and he's a few of ours, and I think that's like really essential that it like matches the feeling.
Yeah, we had a couple songs that we were able to use from an artist too that really helped a lot.
So you produce a lot of music?
I've done it in a really like random way, you know, because I don't have a lot of technical knowledge with the like programs and stuff, or really with music theory either.
Yeah.
I'll just kind of mess around, but I feel like I generally can get the feel right for a movie, like
Yeah.
when it comes to making just like music in the background of a movie,
Yeah.
better so than like making a song for some reason. So
You guys, have you ever thought about making a movie in the vein of Warriors of Virtue or Three Ninjas, those early '90s martial arts kid movie? Because you guys have a dope. I mean, you
it's true.
guys like know that whole scene, and you guys have an alley behind your gym and a trash
Definitely.
can for someone to get thrown in by the bullies or something, and
Yeah,
a portal to another world. Y'all could totally make that movie.
definitely thought about it. I would like to make something that's not so like perverted and gross,
Like what?
like
Warriors.
something like that, something that's more
Oh
wholesome that
yeah,
like kids
wholesome.
can watch.
Why
Because I
why
love those
can't people
movies as a kid.
why can't people make that? Why are you not allowed to make that
I don't
movie?
know. We should do that.
Yeah.
Should do that.
Why are we not allowed to make adventure movies in the world more? You know,
I
Yeah.
really don't know.
the
Like,
only adventure movie I've seen recently in theaters, like a new movie, what would have been? What's the last adventure movie?
um,
I don't mean action or superheroes. That don't really count. They're
yeah,
just not. That's not
I
an
can't even
adventure
think of
movie. I'm talking about an adventure movie.
yeah,
Yeah.
can't think of one.
It seems like they only want to do it if it's like part of a product, like an IP that's already like proven, you know. So it seems like that they've stopped making movies like that where they're a standalone, like just a story.
Yeah.
Because it needs to be part of Marvel or it needs to be part of Star Wars or something like that.
I think that. Have you seen that movie Green Knight? That was an adventure movie. It was a little bit cynical or whatever. Have you seen that
Mhm.
movie with the
I
guy
missed
that's
that one. I wanted to check it out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, David, I was gonna ask you, what do you think about synchronicity, like the concept of synchronicity?
Tell me, what do you think about it?
I don't know what to think about it because I experience it, and I mean I'm a Christian, so I think it's maybe a good. Sometimes I think it's like a warning. Sometimes I think it's like this means something good.
How do you know when it's a warning versus something that's giving you a confirmation?
That's the thing. I guess it depends on what I'm doing probably when it happens. You know, if I'm making like a risky decision or if I'm like, because a lot of them were happening when we were making this last film,
Like what?
like throughout the whole thing.
Like what happened?
I'll struggle to remember all of them, but like a big one was I had this concept of the masks. Like he looks in the mirror and he sees the mask he's wearing, and a part of the inspiration for a lot of this movie was Eyes Wide Shut, where they have the masked ball at the end.
Oh yeah.
And so we were looking for a bar to have the bar scene take place at, and there's a bar literally like on the street we're on, and we just were asking different bars. And James, my brother, was there. He asked them, and they said, "Yeah, no problem, you can shoot here." And it was a Mardi Gras, New Orleans style bar, so it was just covered in masks. And it's all. So I even used the replica Eyes Wide Shut mask in one of the scenes because it matches perfectly. It's the same style of what they would use in those like carnivals. So that's a pretty big one. But
Oh yeah, man. They happen so many times, and it seems to happen when you're in where you want to be in the universe. You know, where God wants you to be.
yeah,
Sometimes, I mean, I don't know about the negative ones, but usually it is like a warning. You'll know it's clearly a warning when you
yeah,
start getting confirmations. And uh, yeah, for sure, you can. The more you're in that creative, I mean, I don't like that word because I don't. People use it for everything, but that
mhm,
creative flow state, you know,
yeah,
like where you're supposed to be. God will usually give you a lot of winks if He knows that's what you like, if that's your kind of thing. That He'll give you a lot of little winks and clues, and the classic one of you're thinking of someone you haven't thought of in a long
yeah,
time, and they call you right then. What is that?
yeah,
There's obviously something there, and I think it's supernatural in the sense that it's not supernatural. It's only supernatural in the sense that our model of what is natural is very stupid and low
mhm,
resolution
right,
and very political. Like what we consider to be established physics is completely political and very mimetic. It's all about reverence for icons on top of reverence for icons on top of reverence for icons on top of reverence for icons, and that thickness of social status that is built unfairly and unwarranted, you're not able to touch. And that's what the sacred is, right? The sacred is that which you're not able to touch socially, and not be expunged and expelled from the community in terms of like high status. And that's what mediates most of what is considered to be established science, including in what we understand about physics, right? So we're stuck with very stupid ideas about physics that are not able to be touched. And we're told to work within those perimeters, which are stupid and false. And so it produces nothing good. And that's why we have subways that are rotting. And that's why you look at Titusville and that mall that you shot and it's decaying, because there's nothing happening in the world of atoms, because our model of atoms is very stupid and dumb, and it's mimetic. It's just, it's the dumbest superstitions. And I don't mean that to slight people who work in those fields, but we have we don't understand, and that's why I talk about on my show a lot, the hermeneutic of suspicion that one must have to be a Christian. And that is, you have to have the suspicious, not in a conspiratorial sense, because that goes in another dumb way, but you have to have this weird kind of like, not weird, but it feels weird because it's kind of second nature to how we're raised in our society, to just think, okay, if something is very rarefied, why? Like if we call this a settled science, like physics, for example, the reason why I pick on it a lot is it's considered to be one of the most rarefied fields that we have, like biology is pretty powerful and prestigious, but it's nowhere near as prestigious as something like chemistry. And then above that is physics. And you're not allowed to talk about physics. You have to be a super genius rocket scientist. You have to be smarter than Einstein. I mean, literally Einstein is synonymous with the smartest person in the room that you know. Right. And that's the reason there's a lot of mimetic social inertia built into that. And once we settle for that, because we say, well, who am I? I don't have enough social proof. I'm not Einstein. I don't have a position at Harvard or Yale. All of that is mimetic nonsense. It's just a black box of nothing. It's an empty, vacuous level of prestige that's not built in reality. And once that you see that, it gives you a kind of superpower to be able to explore the world in all of its majesty and wonder without being a second guesser about what you're seeing. For things like synchronicity. Synchronicity, when you have dumb physics, gets quarantined into realms of new age woo-woo or Carl Jung psychoanalysis theory, which doesn't have any ground. So it's always just, oh, that's just your little fun playtime, Gnostic meandering. But until you can understand, oh, actually, no, could be physical phenomena like a magnetic medium that we exist in. It's kind of like a fluid, a magnetic medium of magnetic particles, that our mind has its own every thought has its own unique vibration and its own unique oscillatory blueprint, and that you can tap into that at the same time. Somebody can have you're thinking of that person, sends out a magnetic field, and it goes through the universe relatively fast. They pick on that, they feel that itch to call you too, right? Or whatever. We don't understand all this stuff because we're not looking for it's like having a model of universe that says there is no new world, that it's remember back when we didn't know there was the North America and all that. Mm-hmm. And they had a model that said there wasn't that, right? And so, you look at that map and you're like, no, this is just nothing. There's nothing there, or it's going to take us to India, right? And then somebody's like, no, actually, we just go on a boat and we can go. And then you go there, and still they were using their old models to say, okay, we've reached the Indies. Now we're in India again. They kept saying that, right? And that's kind of where we're at, right? When it comes to like our physical sciences need to catch up to our minds and our dreams and once I think that's why social media and everything is in such a mental hellscape right now, is because if we are incarnational beings, that means we're body and soul equally important, equally intertwined together. It's not body and soul. Body and soul are intertwined together and equally important. And when humans don't have a healthy outlet to express themselves incarnationally in the world of atoms, then all of the innovation gets artificially channeled into the world of the mind, which creates a Gnostic hellscape where we're always focused on, what does technology mean? Technology means Bitcoin. That's bits. That's of the mind. Technology means AI. That's of the mind, right? You're not thinking today that right now everybody in Silicon Valley is thinking about how to make anti-gravity devices. That's in the world of atoms. That's incarnational. That's embodied, right? Energy too cheap to meter. That's embodied. Elemental transmutation, that's embodied. Everything is in the world of the mind. A new website, a new app, a new AI, a new Bitcoin, a new drug that can be patented, which is information, intellectual property of the mind, mind. Nothing is in the world of, you're not allowed to do anything great in the world of atoms. I think that disconnect, the kind of outlawing of innovation in the world of atoms by default of social pressure, creates this kind of mutated, disembodied hell that everybody's experiencing it. And the artists, people like you, are going to be the first people, kind of the canary in the coal mine, because you're listening to your dreams and you're expressing your dreams. So you're expressing, and I think that movie and some of the other stuff I've seen from you kind of expresses some of that, right? I mean, I don't want to, analyze your films for you, but I felt like you were making a depiction of what it's like to be in a world that's disembodied, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. James, what about you and your bakery? Do you have a bakery where you go, or do you do that at home, or how do you do that?
I actually just I ended up getting a second job, or I guess it's a third job now, but at a bakery just across the street that I'd always gone to as a customer, and I didn't even know I would like baking at all. And then I just got really, into it and started getting
What kind of baking do you do?
So I do, I'm basically a specialty baker. So I just go in and do like Southern biscuits, and I do like sourdough bread. And then what I really want to add on to that would be like some really good pizza would be my latest obsession. So I've just been making pizza every day.
What have you learned about, what have you learned from that sourdough and all this biscuits? Is it the water that's important? I hear about the water.
Yeah, I don't know how much that is. It's only been 3 years that I've been doing it, so there's still be a lot that I'll learn, but I haven't seen the water.
You're still like a brown belt for bakers.
Yeah, whatever, probably be something lower than that, but it seems like most people don't really try that hard, Obviously, the people I work with are, they're just doing it as a job. They're not like obsessed about baking or something. So
I feel like there and stare at the dough at eye level and stuff, and they're like, "What are you?"
Yeah, you got to really,
please. I know you're into art, but please get back to work. And you're staring at the dough and trying to examine the piece at eye level. Wow. Now, what is your favorite thing to make?
Well, right now it's definitely pizza.
Okay.
I just think that could be a really good thing to get really good at.
Now, you work at like a hipster bakery or like a more of a conventional bakery?
It's kind of more traditional, I'd say, more old school.
You know those hipsters that charge like $18 for a loaf?
Yeah.
God. And then they give you the thing, and it's like a minimum tip of 40%. As the early, when they have the little pre-tips, and it's like, good Lord, you communists are greedy. Good Lord, man. Just bankrupt me just for me buying one of your sourdough loaves that are very, very flat. There's no texture. They're hard as chip your I've chipped half my teeth on hipster baker experiments, Wow. Have you learned anything? Have you had any insights about a movie or something you'd like to share with your brother now about from baking? Any ideas or anything come to mind?
Nothing as far as like an idea for a movie. We have like lots of different ones that we'd like to work on in general, but I think it kind of just teaches the same thing that I learned from Jiu Jitsu or filmmaking or anything, is that getting really good at that can make it to where you can be creative with it. And that's when it's like really fun, because you're able to actually just try to make something different because you understand it.
Yeah, that's something that Scott Adams, that guy that created Dilbert, says, I thought was a good way to remember, is like, when you can stack talents, you may not be the best. He said, I may not be the best cartoonist, but I also had a lot of years in the corporate business world. And so I was able to add, good enough cartoon skills with experience in the business world to create Dilbert. It's like, and some other things that he talks about. It's like sometimes stacking your talents, like, you have experience in running a business, you have experience doing Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, you have experience making movies, music, and then baking. And then sometimes a combination of some of those together can make something very unique that everybody really enjoys. That's kind of your monopoly, right? Well, I really appreciate you guys spending this time with me. And is there anything else you'd like to leave us with, or some projects that you might want to mention, or a website for people to watch your stuff?
Oh, well, we're on YouTube and most social medias just as Yellow Dead Fish. We're working right
Yellow
now.
what?
All right, Yellow Dead Fish.
Yeah, that's your film studio.
Yeah, that's the name we ended up with. We struggled to figure out a name, and there was like a deadline for, and we just ended up with that one. But
There was a dead what?
a deadline, like we had a festival we were entering, and we had to have a name for
Oh, I thought you said there was a dead lionfish you saw, and therefore you named it a
No.
yellow dead fish. I was like, whoa, that's weird.
Yeah, that would be
Deadline.
yeah, deadline. And right now we haven't done much in a while, but right now we're working on this short film that we shot in an abandoned mall. So we're trying to finish that, and that'll probably be the next one up.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. And I saw some of that. That was really interesting.
Nice, thank you.
I don't want to spoil it, but it's dark because it's an abandoned mall, so it's pretty dark.
Mhm.
Literally.
Yeah.
How'd you get in there?
So that's the Titusville Mall. My dad was doing some work for the owner,
And he
and he
let you in
just
there.
asked him, and he said, "Yeah, no problem." So we just went in there. There
Man,
was a lot of mold.
oh wow, did you wear a mask?
I wore a mask, yeah, and I got an ear infection. I got a fungal ear infection, and my theory
Ooh.
is that it was from the mall.
Yeah.
And so that's how, when I watch that footage, I can like smell the mall, and I feel my ear. It's like
The
it's like
strangest thing you saw in the mall
strangest thing.
or something that stood out.
Nothing was too strange. It's just like it's a unique environment to be in a place that was once like a pinnacle of all of this wealth and people spending money and
Yeah.
having fun and children having fun, and it's just falling apart and rotting, and it feels
Yeah,
like
millennials really like watching videos of abandoned malls. That's like one of their favorite things.
yeah.
Why is that?
I don't know. I think it's maybe a symbol for innocence lost, or something
But
from
why
their
do they
time.
want to watch that for hours a day? Because there's like these guys that go around the country and they go into abandoned
Yeah,
malls.
I watch those too. I
It's
don't exactly know,
a
but
very
yeah,
millennial thing.
yeah, definitely,
Mm.
yeah.
Millennials are just heartbroken as hell about everything, aren't they? Goodness,
Pretty much, yeah, yeah.
sad.
Actually, when I was a kid, my dad had a leather store in the mall, and we were homeschooled, so we spent like hours and hours in like a back room of the mall, and there were mannequins. So there's something connected there, I think.
Yeah, yeah. I remember inside my grandmother's garage, it smelled like like um, like the detergent smell of from the the smell and the she had old puppets and stuff, and
Mm.
man, that was such an experience. Every time you'd step in there, you could just smell the smell of this type of detergent that your grandmother likes, and these
Yeah.
puppets that she crafted herself, and
Wow.
the
Yeah.
the felt experience of it all was
Mm.
really incredible. Yeah, that was like my, that movie, Batman, where he falls in the cave and he finds his true identity.
Yeah. Right.
That's what it was for me when I stumbled into the darkness of my grandmother's garage and saw all these puppets with eyeballs, from the 1950s and 60s that she had constructed over the years.
Wow.
Mm.
Just amazing. I can still remember that to this day.
Does she still have them?
Some of
Or
them,
are they?
some of them have been passed down through the years. Yeah,
Yeah, that's
she's no
pretty
longer with us.
Hmm.
What about you, James? What was your Batman cave experience?
I don't know. That's hard to say.
Yeah. That's a good question.
I mean, we had a kind of some tumultuous times in our childhood with some substance abuse and things like that. So there's some hiding on the top of the bunk bed type of stuff,
Wow.
So definitely a lot of like that kind of stuff resonates with us, like stuff about childhood and things like that, and kind of it can get into like kind of a cycle where you're just ruminating on these negative things,
Yeah.
and you don't break out of that.
That's so true. That's what I was trying to get at. Millennials of this generation, they are just, there's only one millennial generation. It's just millennials, and they're just so negative about everything. Defeatist. They feel like they're going to lose.
Yeah.
Every person I know, almost every one of them, the millennial people, are very. They have a. They don't believe in anything, besides maybe their political ideology, or if they have a religious ideology. That's about the only thing that gives them, you know,
Yeah.
any kind of animus to get up every day.
I
And
was kind of, yeah,
what's that?
I was kind of stuck in that, like a pretty bad vicious cycle of that, up until actually when I saw your interview with Uber Boyo.
Oh, okay.
It was like a really
Yeah.
connected a lot of things in my head that
Yeah.
needed to connect for me to move on. And it
Good.
really did have a big impact. So I really appreciate that
Thank
that
you.
video
We
and
need to
being
get
able to
Uber
see it.
Boyo baptized and stop talking about
Yeah.
too much. Yeah, that's next. You remind me, that's on my to-do list. I get him
Yeah,
baptized.
yeah.
He's over there ranting about Ireland all the time and talking about Nietzsche on Twitter.
Mhm.
Got to work on him. What? But you know, it's so true though that you've got. Gosh, I can't imagine. You know, and even that what's that guy's name? He's one of the only guys, and you guys probably like him. The guy, God, always forget his name every time when I interviewed Father Turbo, I forgot his name. Remember that? Did you watch Father Turbo's interview, the last one I did with him on UFOs, and what should you burn an alien alive when you see it as a demon, or accept it as a with compassion? Um, Sam Hyde, remember him?
Yeah.
So he's the only guy that's doing anything, right? But his stuff kind of appeals to, um, I mean, I don't want to say he's pushing it, but he kind of appeals to that millennial paralyzed cynicism, you know?
Definitely. Yeah.
Sitting there with playing your video games and kind of this deep level of irony that just goes on and on and on endlessly, right?
Mhm.
And nobody wants to make an earnest movie. I remember one time I had a millennial friend, and I shared with him a song, and he said, "I'm not here to make an earnest song. You want to make earnest music."
Mhm.
Mm.
And that stuck with me because I was like, "What does that mean?" It means he was saying, because he was a guy tapped into the millennial kind of spirit. He didn't want to make earnest music. He said, "I wanted to make deconstructive music, cacophonous noises." And I was like, "What about an earnest song?" He didn't want to make that. And I thought that stuck with me. There's a lot of these people. Why do you think millennials have this paralyzed? Now, the little Gen Z ones, they're a little bit more plucky. They're insane. The ones I meet, kind of insane, right? I wouldn't say the ones I meet in real life, but I would just say the ones that you see having a voice on the internet, they seem to be rather insane, but there's a little pluckiness to them.
Mhm.
They want to, I'm going to go do it. But they're late, they don't want to work a job, and that's fine. They don't want to be an employee, right? That's what I hear anyways. They don't want to do anything that way, but there's a kind of, you know, they're over it all. Everything is a conspiracy. Everything's an inside job. Oh, duh, that kind of attitude. I'm just they're so burned out by cynicism. It's like they kind of flip through to the other side. But the millennials, if you look at the millennials, their little souls are wounded still. I'm a millennial, but you know what I mean? There's a woundedness that has them drawing back to Applebee's and then a hipster farmer's market on a Saturday and just playing that same cycle
Yeah.
over and over, and they can't break free from it. What is that? Is it 9/11 that happened when they were that age? Was it the boom bust, the crash in 2008? Is that why, is it the decline? Is it because they were at the right age when they saw the 90s, which they thought was such a good time compared to today, but then everything is revealed to be this horrible monster,
Mm.
Underneath everything?
Yeah.
What
Seems
do you
like
think
they
it is?
had, like kind of like when someone's black pilled, where they've just had like things that are like a red pill could be something true, but if you think about those things too much, I feel like you end up getting to where you just think everything is a corrupt. If it has any kind of inconsistency, then it's completely worthless now.
Yeah.
And so just like how they'll do with their supposed heroes, we could have someone we all see as a great guy. We find out he did something bad, and now it's that nothing that he did matters, or
Yeah.
there's no way, no redemption. It just has to be that
Yeah.
we were right again. Nothing matters.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the stuff that kind of brought me out of that was listening to you because of Gerard's take on the way that the world works. before Christ,
Yeah.
and the way that it can work with Christ.
Wow. Yeah.
And then also with some things with like Michael Malice said like one line where he just said like, if something matters, then everything matters. So it's kind of like if you can, it felt like if like you can disprove the idea of nothing mattering with just one example. So it's not like asking a lot, you know.
Yeah.
If you can find one thing that's important.
Did you see my recent? I've referenced this parrot a couple times called Seat or something. I got to find out. I think it's still alive. I'd like to. Maybe we should make a movie about this. This little parrot called Seat or Kisi, Nikisi. Nikisi is this gray parrot that was trained how to use English language very early on. It's like 60 or 50 years old now. Have you heard of this parrot?
No.
And became so good at it, but then the owner was concerned that it was so much more than just language. For example, they actually had Rupert Sheldrake, who's a biologist, came in. He's a little bit different from most biologists. I don't know if you've heard of him. He talks about morphic fields. And so some of his stuff is not accepted, of course, by the conventional model. But what he was studying this little bird called Tsitsi or Nikisi. Nikisi not only has a very good language, but also could tell what their owner was thinking or looking at from another part of the room, right? So you could, she could be upstairs and look at a photograph of like a car, and then she'd hear that bird downstairs say, nice car, like that, you know? Or one time she was watching a Jackie Chan movie. You guys like Jackie Chan movies. And the parrot shouted out, when Jackie Chan was falling, he was about to fall off of a tall building, watch out, don't fall, don't fall. But the bird was in another part of the house. It only said it when she was watching and her family were watching the scene where the bird, where the guy was having that situation.
Wow.
And they tested it scientifically where they had scientists come in and observe using the principles of a scientific experiment to demonstrate, yes, this little Nikisi could more than beyond the noise level, meaning it was beyond just a random coincidence, that it could visualize and say things that their owner was thinking. And the owner, literally the owner would be, now this is your movie scene right here. The owner would be, you know, dreaming, and then the dream in their head, the bird would be sitting by her face and say the word of the dream that she was visualizing in the dream. So there's some kind of field effect, right? And that's probably connected to synchronicity and all that. But when you realize that parrots, and it's not that parrots are necessarily unique to the animal species, except for the fact that they can verbalize words, you know, unlike other animals, they can verbalize words, so they can express what other animals may be feeling, you know, in the magnetic field as you, right? Like a dog or other things, right? And it's connected to like how dogs know when their owners are leaving. Like the moment the owner decides to quit and go home, they have a camera where the owner's at the office and he can quit at any random time. So it's the same effect. As soon as the person decides, all right, I'm done, that's it, logs out of the computer, gets up, the dog's ears perks up and goes right to the window to wait for the master to come home, even though they're many, many, many miles apart. Right? It's like there's a magnetic field of thought that's being tapped into that they pick into because of their relationship. It's usually based on relationship. You have to have a bond built of love or something, right? That's very, I mean, do you see that? And it's like, how can you be cynical about the world when you realize there's so much left to be discovered, right? Like we're so in the dark ages, you know, we think that we've all figured it all out and now we're all mad because our malls are closing. And it's like, no, dude, this is just such an early stage of the human species. We have no idea the wild wonders that await us. Right. And that gives you a totally different disposition, you know, as an artist or a business person or anything, right? To be like, wow, there's a whole frontier around us right under our noses that the parrot taps into and gives you a glimpse of. You know, so to me that gives me hope, you know.
Yeah, definitely.
As long as there's a Nikisi dreaming and visualizing the dreams you're having, that gives me hope that there's something left to be explored that could really change the world for the better.
Mhm.
And also could be could be giving us insight into why the world is so socially destructive today, right?
Yeah.
The ideas that are being disseminated, the thoughts, that magnetic field could be used for harm too if it's not being properly intentionally fed into the right way. That's why the Bible says take every thought captive, right? And when you pray as if it's already been done unto you. The visualization of the success, right? That's part of this like process of manifesting the kingdom of heaven. All right, I really appreciate you guys coming on. Thanks again. And again, it's Yellow Dead Fish, right? On YouTube.
Got it.
And the short film is I Am a Man, right?
I'm a Man. Yeah.
I'm a Man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for having us on.